Straight ahead on Law and Crime Daily, a look inside the mind of accused Sarah Lawrence cult leader Lawrence Ray. Plus, will one-time socialite Ghislaine Maxwell be granted a new trial? What both sides have to say on alleged juror misconduct. And
we are starting the jury selection process, but I've been handed a document indicating that an agreement has been reached.
In the 11th hour, Krystal Daniels enters a plea deal in connection to the death of her son, baby Joe Daniels. But first, a mother's intuition.
If he didn't answer her call or call her back, he's not on this earth.
The mother of NBA star Lorenzen Wright takes the stand as the accused murderer stands trial. Law and Crime Daily covering court cases from coast to coast. Welcome everyone to Law and Crime Daily. I'm Brian Buckmeyer along with Terry Austin. Testimony begins in Tennessee where Billy Ray Turner stands trial for the murder of NBA star Lorenzen Wright. As the prosecution's first witness, the slain basketball player's mother takes the stand. Lorenzen Wright was reported missing in July 2010 when he didn't return calls to family members. Days later, his body was found in the Tennessee woods near his mother's home. 7 years after his death, the murder weapon was recovered in a Mississippi lake. That's when defendant Billy Ray Turner was arrested and later charged with Wright's murder. Prosecutors say Wright's ex-wife, Shara Wright, recruited Turner and shot and killed her ex-husband. They say she was after the basketball player's life insurance policy. Shara Wright was later charged in connection to her ex-husband's murder. She's currently serving a 30-year sentence for facilitating the murder. As the prosecution's first witness in the Turner trial, Lorenzen Wright's mother was called to the stand. She explained when she knew something was wrong and how Shara Wright reacted to the news that her ex-husband was missing.
Was there a point that you became concerned that something had happened to Lorenzen?
Oh, yes. When he did return my call. Because he always returned my call, mine and Laura's. That's why I waited to the end to call Laura, because I know if he hadn't called her back, it was something wasn't right, because he always called me her back.
Lawrence's daughter?
Yes. I wish I could play the message I left. Like, where are you? Call me ASAP.
And you didn't hear from him?
Didn't hear from him. Nobody else had heard from him.
Did you talk to Lauren?
I know. I don't want to talk to her last, because she the final draw. Because if he didn't answer her call or call her back, he's not on this earth.
Did what she tell you made any sense at all?
None of it. Nothing makes sense.
Did it cause you to feel any certain way?
Like she knew something but wasn't saying.
Later, prosecutors showed the jury the murder weapon and heard from detectives about Shara Wright's reaction when it was recovered.
Did she react like it was bad news?
Yes.
How bad?
She could tell that she was under a lot of stress that we had found that firearm.
Now the news is not just the murder weapon and we're getting close, but a murderer's been arrested.
Correct.
Did her attitude change? Is she happy now?
No.
What's her reaction now?
It's more intense.
More intense.
Yes.
Good or bad?
I would take it as bad.
Bad. There are more interceptions that she's suicidal.
Correct.
Joining us today is civil rights attorney Philip Hamilton and Terry Austin. Philip, Shara's reaction to finding the gun. The defense and prosecution are obviously going to argue it differently, but I want to know, how do you see it in connection to this case?
I mean, the finding of the gun is in many respects critical. I mean, we know ultimately that this death occurred in 2010. It took quite a few days ultimately for, Mr. Wright's body to be found. But of course, the gun is the linchpin behind how we can ultimately prove up the homicide. And to the extent that we had a cousin that helped identify the gun within the lake, it gives a lot of corroboration to the extent that the defense is going to try to turn this on, oh, such and such is just trying to make testimony in regards to being able to get lesser time shaved off or what have you. This is a big corroborating point. So I think to the extent that the gun has actually shown up, it spells big problems for the defense.
Yeah. Now, Terry, Lorenzen Wright's mother, the first witness on the stand, as we said, how do you think her testimony affected the jury?
No question, it had a huge impact on that jury, and it was a strategic move to put the mother on the stand first. It made a lot of sense to me. You could see that she has been distraught ever since this happened. She started crying the second she got up on that stand. The judge actually offered her tissues. Very good judge, by the way, very even-handed with both the defense and with the prosecution. But she was able to humanize this particular victim. Obviously, everyone knows who Lorenzen Wright is, but she made him as her son. And I think everyone could absolutely relate to that. And she even had a point of levity when she said she wanted him to continue in school and he said he was going to make $1 million. The whole jury laughed when she said, oh, okay, well, then go play basketball. So she humanized him for sure.
Yeah, definitely some touching testimony there. And of course, you can continue to watch Tennessee v. Billy Ray Turner here at the Law and Crime Network, where we're providing gavel-to-gavel coverage. An update now to a familiar story brought back into the spotlight through the recent Netflix series Inventing Anna, as fake heiress Anna Sorokin faces deportation to Germany. Sorokin made headlines when her claims of being a German heiress who lived a posh New York lifestyle turned out to be a swindling scheme. She went by the name Anna Delvey, claiming she had more than $60 million fortune overseas. Prosecutors said she lied to stay at high-end hotels for weeks at a time, falsified records, and maneuvered her way into New York social circles to have her expenses covered. In all, they say Sorokin stole $275,000. Sorokin was convicted in 2019, but on Monday, she filed papers seeking to hold off on being deported, orders which were signed last month. Her attorney says they were given a month to appeal. That deadline comes on Thursday. Sorokin remains in ICE custody. In more celebrity legal news, the incident report is released in the death of Full House actor Bob Saget. This after a Florida judge rules all records surrounding the investigation will be permanently sealed. Saget was found dead in his Orlando hotel room January 9th after failing to check out. While officials say foul play was not a factor and that no one else was inside the room at the time, the circumstances surrounding his death has caused a stir across the internet. The recently released report says fractures around the actor's eyes and bleeding around his brain were likely caused when Saget hit his head on something hard covered in something soft, like a carpeted floor. Saget's family filed a lawsuit requesting the release of any photos, videos, or any other recordings related to the investigation be prohibited. A Florida judge made that permanent on Monday. Still ahead on Law and Crime Daily, could disgraced socialite Ghislaine Maxwell be granted a new trial? But first, a last-minute plea deal entered for Krystal Daniels just before she was set to stand trial. The latest developments in the murder of Baby Joe.
Hi, this is Dan Abrams with exciting news for all of our Law and Crime followers on YouTube. You can now get the live Law and Crime Network with YouTubeTV for all of your daily live trial coverage, legal news, expert analysis, and original true crime programs. Subscribe to YouTubeTV today and then locate Law and Crime in the channel guide. And for only $1.99 a month, you can add the network to your bundle. Watch Law and Crime every day with YouTubeTV. We put you in the jury box.
Welcome back to Law and Crime Daily. A mother charged in relation to her son's disappearance entered into a no-contest agreement with Tennessee prosecutors Wednesday as jury selection was set to begin in the trial for Krystal Daniels. Krystal is a second person charged in connection to Joe Clyde's disappearance in 2018. The boy's father, Joseph Daniels, was already convicted of murdering their son this past summer, despite the child's remains having never been found. He is presumed dead, and there's no indication Krystal knows where her husband hid the body. Krystal wasn't charged in his homicide. Prosecutors allege she did nothing to protect Joe Clyde from Joseph when he was beating the boy to death. On Wednesday, she pled no contest to an aggravated child abuse charge, conspiracy to commit aggravated child abuse, false reporting, and tampering of evidence.
We are starting the jury selection process, but I've been handed a document indicating that an agreement has been reached whereby the state and the defense have agreed that Ms. Daniels may enter a no contest plea, a nolo contendere plea to count 1, aggravated child abuse, and receive a sentence of 15 years to serve. Count 2, conspiracy to commit aggravated child abuse, receive a sentence of 12 years to serve. Count 3, false report, 4 years to serve. Count 4, tampering with evidence, 6 years to serve. These would be served at 85%, and they would be concurrent with one another. Is that correct? So essentially an effective 15-year service.
All right, back to break down Daniels' 11th hour plea as civil rights attorney Philip Hamilton and Terry Austin. Terry, Krystal Daniels pleads no contest to charges. Can you explain how that differs from a guilty plea?
Right. Well, when a defendant pleads guilty, they are admitting that he or she committed that crime. But when you plead a no contest, you're neither accepting it or rejecting it. Basically, you're just telling the court you're going to go straight to jail. You're not going to fight the charges. So the effects are technically very close to the same because they waive their jury right in each case. They have to knowingly and willingly do it in each case. So I think most people don't even see the difference, but you're just not admitting to that guilt when you are doing that no contest. It could have an effect in a civil trial. If it's a felony case, then it can't be held against you in a misdemeanor. But so that's where it comes in.
Yeah, Philip, a number of charges guilty of. I think when you do the math, she's looking at about 15 years. But the major question is, does the investigation into where Baby Joe's body still continue?
I mean, we'll ultimately see, Brian. Could they potentially wave a carrot in front of either Krystal or her husband at this point, now that both of them have essentially accepted culpability for this? Even as Terry noted, that we don't have an outright guilty plea from Krystal, it's tantamount to as much, particularly when a mother at this point is not fighting charges against the fact that she in some way contributed to the death of her son. So to the extent that maybe in some way some years could be dangled in front of them to try in some manner to, reduce their sentences, we'll see ultimately if that works. But at this point, I think the prosecution has exactly what they wanted from both of these parties.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm hoping that does happen, that information is released in some way, shape, or form. Shave off a year or 2 years, whatever it is, but I think this young child needs a proper burial, so we'll keep eyes on this case. Switching now to Ohio, where testimony Wednesday shifted away from victim families, members, and back to healthcare professionals in the trial for former Dr. William Hussell, a physician charged in the death of over a dozen patients. Prosecutors allege Hussell ordered fatal doses of fentanyl to be given to patients under his care at Mount Carmel Hospital in Columbus, Ohio, from 2015 to 2018. They say medication altered the 14 patients, causing death. Hussell's defense team argues the former ICU doctor was giving them end-of-life comfort care. On Wednesday, a former Mount Carmel nurse testified to having discussions with Hussell about working on being better at discussing the end-of-life process with families. He told jurors Hussell had difficulty speaking in groups and said his goal was to get better at presenting palliative care with families. Other medical professionals also testified, saying Hussell lied to a patient not named in this case about which drug was being administered. Testimony is expected to continue in this case on Thursday. Coming up on Law and Crime Daily, accused cult leader Lawrence Ray suffers multiple seizures. Could that mean a lengthy delay in the federal case? Plus, prosecutors and defense attorneys clash over recent juror testimony. Will a federal judge hand down a new trial for Ghislaine Maxwell? Welcome back. Ghislaine Maxwell should get a new trial. At least that's what her defense attorneys are once again pushing for in new arguments filed this week. This comes after a juror testified in a post-trial hearing about his juror questionnaire. Last week, Scotty David testified he was distracted and quickly filled out the questionnaire when he failed to disclose his own history as a victim of sexual abuse. Maxwell's defense team argues that is grounds to vacate the jury's guilty verdict. Federal prosecutors argue David's testimony shows he made an honest mistake and that her verdict should stand. They say it's clear Maxwell received a fair trial. The British socialite was convicted on 6 counts in December of last year relating to sex trafficking and grooming of young girls. Prosecutors say Maxwell helped recruit underage girls for her companion, the late financier Jeffrey Epstein. Maxwell faces 65 years in prison. Right now, sentencing for Maxwell is set for June. Civil rights attorney Philip Hamilton and Terry Austin join us again as we discuss the potential new trial for Ghislaine Maxwell. Terry, what do you think of the chances in terms of getting a new trial? Is there actually enough to overturn the conviction?
I think there is enough to overturn it. Listen, right now, Nathan has so much information and could decide either way. Look, as far as what we know, what happened in the media, we know that Scotty David said he influenced those jurors. We know that he said he talked about what happened to him as a child. He told them, listen, believe these victims because it happened to me. That affected the deliberation. So right there, as far as I'm concerned, I do believe it is a very good reason to overturn this particular conviction, even though no one wants to see this trial again. So if it was an honest mistake, fine, believe that. But if it affected the deliberations, we need to overturn that conviction.
Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of this honest mistake argument from the prosecutor. Philip, let's ask you. That's what the federal prosecutors are calling what Scotty David did, and that the conviction should stand. Is that a strong argument to you?
It's not the strongest argument when they are making the argument that it was an honest mistake, but of course requested the court to provide this juror with counsel for worry of the fact that he may end up facing a perjury charge from their same office. So their argument is contradicted a bit. I think in regards to whether or not that ultimately leads to a new trial, I think Judge Nathan is going to very meticulously work her way through this in a way to try to find her way out of having to order a new trial. I think, of course, that the effect on the deliberations was probably substantial. However, legally, she's not going to be able to look too deep into that. So she's going to look and ultimately see, did the fact that he lied or made an honest mistake require a new trial? And I think legally it's going to be an uphill battle for the government.
Yeah, new trial, no new trial, I don't know. But make sure you continue to watch Law and Crime Daily. We'll give you those updates as they come in. When we come back, disturbing video shows life on the inside of the alleged Sarah Lawrence College sex cult. What shocking video jurors are shown and why the trial could be pushed back even farther. Welcome back to Law and Crime Daily. A jury is seated, but opening statements are delayed in the federal trial of one-time Theranos COO Ramesh Sunny Balwani. Balwani faces 12 federal fraud charges in relation to his time with a now-defunct company. Founded by convicted fraudster Elizabeth Holmes, Theranos was touted as a company that would revolutionize blood testing with its state-of-the-art Edison device. Later, tests found many problems with the device. In a federal trial spanning months, Holmes pointed the finger at Balwani, her former boyfriend and Theranos business partner. Holmes testified that Balwani emotionally and physically abused her and even forced her to have sex with him against her will. Prosecutors countered, saying Holmes knew about the company's issues and lied her way into millions of dollars. In January, a federal jury found Holmes guilty on multiple counts. Opening statements in Balwani's trial were expected to begin on Wednesday, but were delayed when someone in the courtroom had close contact to a positive COVID-19 case. Openings are now set to be presented on Friday. Switching now to the East Coast, where the federal trial of accused Sarah Lawrence College cult leader is put on hold after the defendant himself suffers multiple seizures. As Law and Crime Daily reported, court was delayed on Thursday when defendant Lawrence Ray suffered a seizure in his jail cell that morning. After court resumed, it was cut early when Ray was taken from the courtroom onto a stretcher after suffering another seizure in the afternoon. Ray stands trial on 17 counts, including extortion and racketeering stemming from the alleged cult. Prosecutors say Ray inserted himself into a group of Sarah Lawrence College students back in 2010, after moving in with his daughter, who was a student at the time. After that, they say Ray manipulated the students, forcing some into sex and prostitution, and even made makeshift therapy sessions. Before court adjourned early on Tuesday, jurors were shown firsthand video of the manipulation and abuse.
Sit down.
I want to go to the bed.
Sit.
I want to go to the bed.
All right, please sit. Come on. Come here. Listen. You gotta sit down on the floor.
I want to sit.
Alicia, lay down.
Troubling and disgusting video, to say the least. Philip, I don't want to say former public defender, because once a public defender, always a public defender, but you know what I mean. Used to be a public defender, and you've seen some serious cases. Are there any arguments that you think the defense can make with a straight face after the jury sees these videos?
I'll tell you right now, as a former public defender, one of my former colleagues is actually Mr. Ray's current attorney, Marty Lennox. And to the extent that anyone is going to be able to turn anything into a fight, it's going to ultimately be her. At this point, you just hold the government to its burden. You don't have the best case. It's clearly an uphill battle for you to try to secure any type of acquittal here. But to the extent that you can hold the government legally to its case, force them to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt, sometimes that's all you can do. And that's ultimately most likely what Ms. Lennox is going to do in this matter.
Right, holding them to their burden and the standard in the case. We'll see how that works out. Terry, all this began when Ray moved into the dormitory at Sarah Lawrence. How was he able to move into a dorm, and do you think the school could be held liable?
Absolutely. I don't understand how he was able to move into that dorm. Listen, he said he was going there to reunite and reconnect with his daughter. But what school allows a father to move into a dorm rule? Basically, the rule should have been that no one can live in that dorm unless you are a student. Did they do a background check? We know that the federal authorities have accused him of, swindling investors to the tune of $40 million. We know that he has served jail time. So why was he even allowed? Did the school do a background check? And if they didn't do any of those things, obviously these students have been harmed, and the parents or the students could bring charges against him, certainly negligence in a civil suit.
Yeah, negligence, emotional distress. I can see the list of civil potential charges coming up, but we'll see how that develops. Well, thank you both, and thank you for joining us here on Law and Crime Daily. We'll see you next time as we discuss justice in America.